A lot of people say the FJ Cruiser is absolutely disgusting. And honestly, I would have to agree with them. So all jokes aside, I love the FJ Cruiser, but I also really hate it. And I'm gonna explain that later in the video, why I think the FJ Cruiser is probably one of the ugliest vehicles around and most unconventional. But right now in this part of the video, we're actually going to go over how this thing is set up currently and what makes it kind of not ugly, you know, compared to a typical FJ Cruiser. So a little backstory, just a few years ago, when I was in my probably early teens, I was out probably here at this place, which is an off-roading park, and I saw somebody have an FJ Cruiser, and there was like a whole line of FJ Cruisers just rolling around, and I thought that was so cool. But fast forward to July 2021 is when we found a totaled FJ Cruiser near my area on Copart, which, if you don't know what that is, that's a salvage auction online where you can buy totaled vehicles with an R title. All right, hold up, I just wanted to pause this video real quick and explain why I keep saying we. So by we, I mean me and my dad. And my dad actually bought this thing off of Copart, and I was gonna originally buy it from him, but I decided not to because I have another project in mind that I will show you guys in a few weeks what that is. But I just want to clarify that that is not mine yet, but since I helped him fix it up, I'm free to use it on occasional trips and stuff like that. But eventually I do plan to buy that thing. But yeah, I just want to clarify that is not my vehicle. So I don't want to act like I'm flexing that, because that's not what I'm trying to do. But anyways, back to the video. So we picked this thing up and it was destroyed. The whole front end crushed in, the hood crushed up, fenders a mess, bumper not even here. Bumper was not even here. Headlights totally gone. And honestly, I could say that was probably the best case scenario, because my biggest gripe with FJ Cruisers is the fender flares and the bumpers. The bumpers are, in my opinion, kind of horrendous. I did like the fender flares for a long time, but in the past like month or two, I realized I like it a lot better without fender flares. And when it was totaled, it actually came without fender flares, and it came with a blacked out roof, which we can tell was an aftermarket job, but it was done really well. And there's a lot of things on this vehicle that whoever had it before, which we have no clue, definitely did a little bit of overlanding with, because there's some modified parts, which is awesome because that means we didn't have to do it. But anyways, let's look at the front end. This is a Smitty-built bumper and a Smitty-built winch, which we have actually not had to use the winch yet. So I've heard really good things about this winch, but haven't had to use it, like I said. Halo lights, I honestly forget what brand they are, but they're honestly probably my favorite thing about this thing is the halos on them. I'm not usually a big fan of the stock FJ headlights, so I was like, I want to change that up, and I thought this was pretty sick, and it also gives it like a darkened look. We blacked out the front grille. As far as front end, there's a lot of other stuff that we did, but not like that you can see. We had to get a new hood, fix the fenders, and there's a lot of stuff as far as alignment and frame pulling that we had to do to straighten the whole thing out, because it was just crumpled. But besides that, that's basically the front. Before we finish, I want to say these are actually 1200 lumen fog lights, which are pretty good, but I have plans to upgrade the lights on this thing and add some more, probably on the roof or something like that. But anyways, let's move on to the rest of the cosmetic modifications. Most of it, like I said, was at the front, underneath, stuff that you don't see. But yeah, let's move on to the back. So as far as the back, there's actually nothing too crazy back here. Whoever had this before us actually put the backup camera up under the wheel cover, which it is usually under the bumper. One thing I did recently, which I hated, the FJ Cruiser taillights. It's literally like this big red blob. So you'll see it here more in the B-roll, but I blackened out all the extra red that you just didn't need in these headlights. And so basically you can see the light, but it's not all the extra red that literally added nothing to the car. And obviously one of the most obvious things that you can see here is the rooftop vent. Is a Smitty-built Overlander 2. I've slept quite a few nights in it, but obviously we only got this thing up on the road in about November. So the amount of nights I've had in this thing are pretty limited, but it's definitely growing with that. And in a few weeks, you're actually gonna see a video where I give my pros and cons of the tent and also like show how to set it up. So stick around for that. And the last thing I wanted to show you guys is the rims, which honestly for right now, we just blacked out and kind of painted the logo a different color. But even with a 2-inch lift, I'm hoping in the next year or two to get 33s or 35s on. I think, I could be wrong, but I believe I measured the other night that these are 30.5. So I'd like to get, a few more inches on there just to get it a little bit higher up. But other than that, there's no suspension work done to it. I definitely want to. That's definitely the next thing on my hit list. And there's a lot more accessories I want to add for overlanding, like max tracks and stuff like that, and more cases to haul stuff. But yeah, let's now talk about why I hate this thing, which I don't, but why FJs are kind of weird. So yeah, let's do that. So now that you've seen the FJ, I'd like to explain why the FJ is probably one of the most ugliest vehicles in stock form, but there's also quirks with it that I don't like just driving it as it is. So first of all, we talked about bumpers, that's obvious, and fender flares. I'm sure most of you would agree with me on that. Maybe not all, but that's just my take. Another big thing actually is the roof. Now, usually the roof comes in white. So no matter what color you get, it's white, or there's a package where you can get it the same color as the rest of the FJ. Honestly, not a big fan of that, and I'm really glad that they blacked out the roof, because otherwise I would have blacked it out anyways, because that's just, I think it looks better black, instead of like the white look. It's just not my thing. And the next biggest pain in the butt would be this third door, which honestly, I don't use it all that often, but when I do, it can sometimes be annoying getting people in and out. It's just kind of a small space to fit through. And that kind of leads on to the next issue with the FJ Cruiser is space. Now, I kind of knew this getting into it, but there's not much space in this thing. Like you can see, the actual back of it is very small. Now you can put the seats down and make it a little bit bigger, and I have done that on trips just to get more room out of it. But just because of that, I do see now why guys carry like Pelican cases on top or something like that with the roof racks, and I eventually want to do something like that. I think that would just make sense to obviously get as much room out of it as I can. Now, the only other issues I have with this thing, besides cosmetic and besides like daily use, would honestly be handling. This thing, once you get over 65, it gets a little weird on the highways. It's not as sturdy, and obviously I drive a car as a daily, so I'm not really used to how an SUV would drive, but I've driven SUVs that feel a lot better than an FJ Cruiser. But I think that's just part of how it is, because it's literally a brick, and that's another thing. Because it's a brick, the fuel mileage is trash. I think one time I calculated I got 10 miles to the gallon with this roof tent up top on a trip where we were on the highway for most of the time. But yeah, obviously if you know anything about FJ Cruisers, you understand that fuel mileage is terrible, and that's just what you get. And the last thing, which is the #1 issue with these things, I heard people complain about it way before I even thought about getting one, was the issue of visibility. When you're on the highway, you really can't see much. And the reason visibility is so bad is mainly due to 3 things. This windshield, as you've seen, is very narrow. It literally needs 3 windshield wipers because it's so narrow. So you're not getting much out of that. Another thing would be this third door. This third door window is tiny at the back. So when you're looking to merge, you can't really see much. There's a huge blind spot at that pillar. And it's honestly kind of the same with the back too, because the windows are very small, and that's just a huge issue. One thing that has helped a little bit with visibility is putting the small circle mirrors on your mirror. It just kind of widens the view. So that helps a lot. But anyway, guys, thank you for sticking around this long. I know it was a quick video just about the FJ and about why it kind of sucks, but at the end of the day, I love this thing. It's not going anywhere. So yeah, thanks for watching.